intro, Smonsky. I'll do the formatter.
Welcome to Upper Pylon 2. Our mission is to provide you with an in-depth review of every episode of DS9 in the order they were broadcast. Tonight's episode is A Call to Arms. And this is Matt in Buffalo.
And this is Blair from Ontario, Canada.
And this is Matt from Arizona.
And this is Chris in South Carolina. And you are cleared for docking. And we are about to go to war, people. This is the one. It's what we've all been waiting for. That lead into season 6 when everything gets crazy awesome. Here's Matt's synopsis. Ram and Lita discuss wedding dresses and nothing at all else substantial happens in this episode. This is the 26th episode of season 5 and 122nd overall. It first aired on June 16th, 1997. It was written by Ira Stephen Bear and Robert Hewitt Wolfe, directed by Alan Croker. Guest stars include Andrew J. Robinson as Garrick, Jeffrey Combs as Wayoon, Mark Alimo as Ducat, Max Grodenchik as Rom, wow, Aaron Eisenberg as Nog, J.G. Hertzler as Martok, Chase Masterson as Lita, Melanie Smith as Tora Zial, Casey Biggs as Damar. And all those people are actually not even guest stars, really.
No, but this is the thing, right? From here on forward, because we're doing the Dominion War storyline, like the guest star list is just going to be like all the secondary cast from now on.
Yeah, the only person that's missing is Kai Wynn. Everyone is in this episode.
She was here
last week. Yeah.
So, yeah. All right, guys, what do you say we take the plunge?
Yeah, but I just like to point out that like it took the starting of war to bring us all back here on the podcast together again.
Absolutely. Teaser. We enter this episode with Ram and Lita discussing wedding dresses. They can't settle on anything, but eventually Zial persuades them all to let Garrick design the dress for them. Ram and Lita then go off to ask Cisco if he can officiate the wedding in 2 weeks, and of course he agrees to. Miles is also there, where he discusses with Cisco how Keiko and the kids have left for Earth in order to avoid the upcoming Dominion storm. They then turn their attention to the window and join a crowd there. All the people are staring at the wormhole. When it opens, a large Dominion fleet swarms through it and heads to Cardassia. Cisco suspects it won't be long now before the Federation space is invaded by the Dominion. Cut to the opening credits.
I like how we have a little bit of levity before we take the absolute plunge.
We had a whole episode of levity last episode, though, man. It's time. Why are we talking about wedding dresses at the beginning of this? What are we doing?
We're continuing character arcs.
I know.
It's the good stuff. It's the bitter pill you got to swallow because you're good. You're better off for it.
Right.
I'm telling you.
And is it really that bitter? I mean,
it's not. No.
Last week,
these guys. Last week was a little bitter.
I love last week's episode.
I think we ended up loving it too, but it was like, can we just get to it? Like, what are we waiting for at this point?
Mm-hmm. But everything that built in that episode is basically paid off here, because the theme of this episode basically is saying goodbye to all the important things, and those important things are really established and really nailed into you in last week's episode.
Well, yeah, I had completely forgotten that we'll get to it in this episode, but I forgot that the Bajoran non-aggression pact came up in last week's show first before it gets mentioned here.
I also like how the writers, they set this up, because, I mean, even though I joke about it being a bitter pill to swallow and we kind of laugh about it, but I think it's good that the writers put these two things in this place, because it reminds us that even though we're about to go into some darkness, some bitter darkness, that this is still Star Trek, and deep in their hearts, each of these people is carrying the hope of that Roddenberry vision. And so, Hansen talks about it all the time, that the Roddenberry vision as it was in those early episodes, especially in TNG, where he just went wild with it, where there can be no, inner conflict or turmoil, that this is kind of what it should be, that it should be deep inside them, and they should be fighting for it because not everybody in the universe is going to agree with them. If that makes sense.
No, it absolutely makes sense. And sometimes you just need to talk about wedding dresses, or, in the case of Discovery, you just need to have like a wild party with beer pong. I love that, by the way. Just FYI. Reminds me of so many college parties.
Yeah, the beer pong was pretty jarring in that episode.
I loved it, and the fact that hip hop, like unlike the rest of Star Trek, it acknowledges that hip hop doesn't die after World War III.
Your favorite movies also recognize that hip hop didn't die, if we count the Beastie Boys.
Beastie Boys.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
Act 1. When we come back, we find the Cisco's sitting down to a family dinner. And Ben isn't happy that Jake has been working for the Federation News Service, and he has an article up talking about how his father is opposing the Bajoran Dominion Non-Aggression Pact that is currently being negotiated. Then we move to Dax and Kira and Odo in the cargo bay. They find that Quark, most likely, has smuggled in a ton of Cardassian yamak sauce. He's betting on the Federation losing the station in short order, and Dax orders it all destroyed. We also find that Kira and Odo aren't really talking to each other, and Kira says things have become awkward ever since it came to light that Odo has feelings for her. And now we have Nog talking with Cisco, asking him if it's true about the rumors that the Romulans have signed their own non-aggression pact with the Dominion. Cisco downplays it a little bit, but then calls Starfleet Intelligence to get the lowdown and follows it up with a staff meeting, which will be our first exposition clip.
The Romulans. I always knew they were without honor. Now they have proven it.
So nice to have somebody who's smooth with these on the podcast.
It's a non-aggression pact.
Which means that the Dominion attacks, they just sit by and do nothing.
Romulans, Niridon, Tholians. Dominion is making impressive inroads in the Alpha Quadrant.
And the Bajorans are still talking to them? Oh, my people will never sign that treaty or any other agreement with the Dominion.
Meanwhile, more Jem'Hadar ships come through the wormhole every week. It must stop. It's going to stop. I've talked to Starfleet Command. They've agreed that no more Dominion ships can be allowed into the Alpha Quadrant. How do we keep them out? We're going to mine the entrance to the wormhole. Prevent the Dominion from bringing any more reinforcements to Cardassia. If we try to stop those convoys, it may very well start a war. Maybe so. But one thing is certain, we're losing the peace, which means a war could be our only hope.
So, little bit of something that we can talk about later, but I think it's important in this scene that they talk about how there is a slight bit of clarification here that just because it's a non-aggression pact with the Romulans, they aren't necessarily allies.
No, they're neutral.
Right. And that's the thing that Jake ends up banking on at the end for his safety. So I think it's interesting that they kind of put this way at the beginning of the episode for something later on that makes you question people's motives or logic later on.
Yeah, I was going to say, we should talk about that Jake scene when we get to it at the very end, but I'm not sure if I entirely follow his logic.
No, it's dumb. We'll get to that. But, man, so much kind of good stuff throughout this. I mean, things are fast and furious. There's a lot of bullet points of just stuff happening in this episode. But just
like we're all the stuff in this episode is like we're awaiting the impending apocalypse, and it's wonderful.
Oh, every step of it's a really nice ratcheting tension within one episode. This is where, again, they do a lot of good work throughout the course of the series in building this tension throughout. I think in a totally modern show, you'd see it kind of spread out. Everything that happens in this episode, maybe over several episodes, but in the span of one episode, every act really does
bring the tension up a little bit. Just seeing the ships come through the wormhole at the beginning is chilling. And then we start seeing the building of this with still, they managed to put in a lot of really good character stuff. The Cisco's dinner together, that father-son dynamic that has always been quite good between the two. We just see that continuing. And then we haven't touched the Odo Kira stuff much. And that is enough, at least in the episode. It's like all the cards that they put on the table throughout the season are at least acknowledged in some way through this episode.
Including
because
yamak sauce.
Yes.
All the big things.
But I mean, this episode has the benefit of being the season finale because then it can like start to tie up those loose ends and set us up for the next season. And speaking of which, you mentioned Odo and Kira. The thing that I liked watching this time through, because I usually skip Children of Time, and if you don't understand why, go back and listen to that episode for obvious reasons. But I noticed, I watched carefully, between Children of Time and this episode, Kira and Odo haven't had any screen time together, so it's conceivable that it's been awkward between them ever since.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, how could it not be a little weird?
But what I'm saying is like I was looking to see if they had scenes together where they were acting normal and then all of a sudden they're back to awkward in this, because sometimes they have some of that inconsistency, but no, they did a good job. They had no scenes together in the intervening 2 episodes.
And I like the just changing focus there. I do like the Nog scene about, hey, sir, what about these rumors? And the reality is rumors usually have some substance to them. And I love the fact that Cisco's like, yeah, don't worry about it. And then he finds out like, crap, it is true. And I thought it was very interesting. And that's your typical Romulans when you think about it. They'll be sneaky. They'll do whatever it takes for now and then worry about the consequences later as we find out next season. So, well,
I mean, I think their plan is that the Federation and the Dominion, the Federation Alliance and the Dominion Alliance will fight each other to, mutually assure destruction, and then the Romulans can come in and just clean up and take what's left.
Yeah, absolutely.
If I'm allowed to stretch a little bit, I like that there's a couple little tiny things in here that kind of bring into question, like we've always liked, the perfectness of Starfleet and the Federation. Rom, a cadet out on the frontier, heard about this before the captain. I kind of like that this
Nog.
I'm sorry, Nog, heard about this before the captain and through official channels. It's like, ooh, maybe Starfleet kind of dropped the ball a little bit on that one. I like. And then the other part that I really like, cutting way ahead, but since it's kind of thematic with this, is that in very anti kind of traditional Star Trek mentality, Starfleet actually struck first. They preemptively attacked the Dominion, knowing it's going to happen, but they went first, deep into Cardassian space to wreck up the place first. And that is just not what you would expect from a lot of Star Trek.
Well, not just that. I mean, when they start mining the wormhole, that's provocation enough.
Well, right.
That's seen more as defense, though. That's a defensive posture.
But at the same time, it's one of the sparks that lights the fire. I mean, and they moved on that first.
Yeah, that's where they are committed to it. They know what's going on, and just lockstep with that. That's it. We'll just attack first because this is, fait accompli. They know what's going to happen. So good for them. They don't wait to be reactionaries. They were proactive. And I like that. But I'm telling you, that's not something you would have probably seen from the Picardy kind of next gen mentality of the Federation of just, no, it's not morally right to act first. We have to only punch after we get punched first.
Right.
So good on them for that.
Well, they finally realized, at least with the Dominion, that if they get punched first, they may never get up again.
That's true. Oh, what do you say we keep going? Act 2. We come back to Miles and Dax, now discussing what the best way to mine the wormhole would be. Rom is there, acting all nutty. But out of nowhere, he figures out the best way to do these mines. Make them tiny, make them cloaked, and make them all have self-replicators so that they can swarm and replicate he should not only get a Nobel Prize, he should get everything in the universe because somehow he invented infinite energy and infinite minds here.
I was going to say, like, from now on, after the war is over, they should just put a bunch of those in front of the neutral zone between them and the Romulans.
If I'm going to be the nerd here, how the hell can this work? You replicate something that can replicate itself for just infinite energy for forever. I don't get it, but whatever. It's an awesome concept. Let's roll with it.
And I like how this is your typical ROM. Completely off on one tangent, and the idiot comes up with a brilliant idea and then goes back to his tangent. Yeah, exactly. But this is the ROM we've loved since day one, that it just took a little bit of time. And we see ROM continue this way throughout the rest of the series. And I just thought it was great. And I just love this episode because it's bringing, again, all the bit players, and I say that in quotes, are actually quite, are playing important roles.
Right. Pretty much, like, except for like a few exceptions, most of the people that we see by the end of this season are the way that they're going to be for the rest of the series.
Yeah, oh yeah, things are locked in right now. I mean, even bit players, I mean, we can extend that to Bashir in this episode. He is very much in the background throughout it. But even then, he still gets a few badass moments here and there. And it's just every character to at least some degree is allowed to shine.
Well, I kind of like, I mean, the war hasn't started yet, but in the middle of that staff meeting when they're all talking, I mean, you could see how much Bashir has come forward and matured, and he's become a little bit hardened, and we'll see more of it next episode when he's having to be essentially a battlefield doctor.
That's right. So back to that Miles and Dax scene. The scene ends with Rom making a crapping joke, which I thought was fantastic, by the way. That was the funniest part of the episode.
Well, no, it's hilarious that he comes up with these brilliant ideas for them, and yet he's still cleaning the crapper on the station.
Oh no, he was just gonna go make a pee. That's all that was. He wasn't gonna go clean it, I don't think.
Oh, I thought that was like he's that's what he's normally assigned to.
No, I think they've graduated him up to bigger and better things here.
You would hope, but
yeah, it's Dax goes off to talk to the captain or whatever. Miles goes off to work, and Rom has to go hit the head. So anyhow, we then cut to Ops, where Kira and Worf express their shock to Cisco that DS9 will be receiving 0 backup and additional ships to defend against this incoming invasion. DS9 has to defend the Defiant while it's being very exposed as it lays these mines.
Yeah, I'm glad that they did that. They followed up on that first, because if they hadn't, that makes no sense. Why wouldn't you send a fleet there?
And I remembered very distinctly, Blair, maybe you can back me up on this, of watching this originally, not knowing what the end was really, that like, really? You're not sending anybody to help? You were getting gypped out of a big battle here. I'm not too happy with that.
I'll be honest, I thought my first reaction was, oh, here we go again. It's your typical, you're the closest ship and you have to be the one to do it, right? That's kind of what I almost thought they got caught in.
Yeah, but you would think that they would have them, they would send the fleet on their way, but it's like, oh, the fleet's not going to get here for 3 days.
Won't be there in time.
Yeah.
It was a red herring, right? You just you took it for what it was and just carried on with the story. Like, and I'll admit, I got caught off guard when they said, "Oh, by the way, we actually struck first and did this, and this," and thought that was fantastic.
It very cleverly kind of took advantage of the cliche of the show and of the series.
Yeah, absolutely.
So now we move on to Kira and Odo, who meet to discuss some more battle preparations. But the conversation quickly moves on to their romantic intentions. And they agree it's probably best to wait until after the invasion. Worry about all the small details first.
I kind of wait. I like that way, the way Nana Visitor just delivered that line. So it's like, okay, great. So the only thing we have to worry about is like possible invasion.
Right. And like Odo finally was extremely mature kind of in the way how he discussed this thing, because it's like, man, he's been reading a lot of those porn books and he got a little bit smoother out of nowhere, I think.
Yeah, that's right. I forgot he was reading all those, dollar bin romances.
That's right.
You know what'll mess up a dollar bin romance? Murdering 1,500 people.
Well, considering that those people never existed,
You
it's not
hush,
murder.
you hush, you soulless. What
Soulless minion of
orthodoxy.
Go back to your cellular entertainment center.
Well, let's ratchet up the tension a little bit more. This next clip now will span an act break into Act 3.
Captain's log, stardate 50975.2. The next Jem'Hadar convoy is due in 5 days, but our efforts to mine the wormhole have already provoked a response from the Dominion, who has sent their Porter Ambassador Wayu to speak with me. What can I do for you, Wayu?
Captain Sisko, I'll make this brief. We know all about the minefield.
I assumed you'd find out sooner or later.
As I see it, you have 2 choices. Whether you remove the mines, or we will take this station from you and remove them ourselves.
I appreciate your directness. Now let me be direct with you. The mines stay. I will not allow any more Dominion reinforcements through the wormhole.
You will not allow?
You heard me.
I can see how that might be your first reaction. But you and I are reasonable men, and surely reasonable men can come to some sort of mutually acceptable compromise.
I didn't think the Dominion believed in compromise.
It saddens me to see how deeply you misunderstand us. All the Dominion wants is to peacefully coexist with its neighbors.
Then why the continued military buildup? Why the weekly convoys of ships and troops from the Gamma Quadrant?
It's the Cardassians. Don't get me wrong. I'm pleased to call them allies, but as you know, they've just been through a terrible war with the Klingons. I'm afraid it's left them somewhat jittery. So they're understandably concerned about ensuring the sovereignty of their borders, and since they're now members of the Dominion, their concerns have become our concerns.
I would think by now you have more than enough ships to defend Cardassia.
You may think that, and I may think that, but the Cardassians...
Oh yes, I know. They're jittery.
You see our dilemma.
I'm beginning to.
What if we agreed to limit our convoys to cargo ships, construction units, civilian aid, things that will help them get their economy back on its feet? Did you know when we arrived, children were starving on Cardassia Prime? It was heartbreaking.
I had no idea things were so bad.
The Cardassians are a very proud people. They don't want to admit to outsiders how dire the situation really is. So, are we agreed? You remove the mines, we restrict our convoys to medical and economic assistance.
That sounds reasonable. I'd have to discuss it with Starfleet first, of course.
I'm sure they'll do whatever Benjamin Sisko recommends. For my part, I'll personally speak to the founders to secure our end of the bargain.
What about Gul Dukat?
He'll be furious. At first. But we've developed a fine working relationship, and I'm sure I can help him to see the wisdom of our decision.
I will leave it in your capable hands.
You won't be disappointed. This is a momentous day. You and I have just taken the first step towards ensuring peace between our peoples.
Well, there you go. Couldn't be any more clear. The attack is clearly on its way.
Yeah, I'm glad someone's bullshit meter went off because mine was.
Oh yeah, and this is just this is like maybe the least clear of the World War II parallels that they're drawing in the episode, but I'm pretty sure there was one last convoy that came out of Russia into Germany right before Germany attacked. So I think they're trying to go from history for all these things and trying to talk about, hey, let's get one more convoy through and then the attack will come. And it's just they keep going back into history to tell these stories, and you can just see it through some of these. But then yeah, this really great scene of like Wei Yun, just like you can almost buy his crap that he's selling, almost do it. You can see why they send these Vorta after people to try and, you know, talk sweet nothings into their ears to win them over.
He's a car. He's a used car salesman.
You know, a more naive, younger, maybe inexperienced officer may buy that, right? Just enough, and it would give them just enough time to make the attack successful. But luckily, we don't have that in Cisco.
So when Cisco meets with his staff, it's very clear that the minefield must be finished today. A Dominion fleet could arrive at the station within a day. So Martok is off to the border to watch for the inevitable invasion, and the crew goes off to prepare for battle. Cisco then tells Kira to inform the Bajorans that they must now sign that non-aggression pact to ensure their safety. When the Dominion comes, the station could fall, and Starfleet simply is not going to be able to protect the Bajorans. Presumably at this point, Cisco knows the station is going to fall, right?
Well,
he knows what the plan is.
Well, he must have known this some time ago, because this is fulfilling the prophecy from back in Rapture. Bajor must stand alone, the locusts are coming, all that stuff.
Not only that, but now he's seeing all the pieces come together, because at this point, Starfleet has told him as the orders is all you have to do is get that wormhole shut.
And then get out.
That's it. You know, the station's expendable. She's out. Let the Bajorans, you know, be on their own.
Yeah, I wonder too, as you just said it, let the Bajorans be on their own. You wonder if this was Cisco's idea to say, yeah, I'm going to keep them safe. Not Starfleet wants to keep them safe, but rather Cisco wants to keep them safe and make them join or sign the non-aggression pact. I remember when watching it for the first time, I thought, wow, that's ingenious. I honestly didn't see it coming, to be honest. But it was a good callback to, as you said, Hanson, the Rapture. It kind of finally, it made it understand why they never joined the Federation the last time. And it almost vindicates Cisco, I guess, in some ways.
Oh, yeah. If they had joined, Bajor would be the first conquered world.
Yeah, absolutely. So I thought great callback, and really I thought it caught as a first time viewer, it caught me off guard many moons ago.
Oh yeah, you never would expect that. Hey, if the station falls, not only is it going to be under the Dominion rule, we're going to see a lot of our characters, you know, sort of working with them there. That was a pretty good surprise at the time, I remember. So very shortly afterwards, the pact is signed, and the Bajorans are now being evacuated from the station, including Zial. And we get the first goodbye in this episode.
A little creepy too, if I might add.
Between Garrick and Zial.
Like, if we thought that they were in the friend zone, I'm not so sure after this scene.
Yeah, I'm going to point out that this is in my notes.
Why do they do the creepy stuff?
Because it was always there.
It was not always there.
It was always there.
Well, at least now we have, you know, Zial, who's over the age of, you know, consensual things. Where we didn't have that before, so.
Yeah, only now because the actress is, and they changed the actress. I don't know if the character should be. I'm still not sure.
Well, I mean, I'm just saying that that's what we're presented with here, and like I said, the last time we saw her, I think Melanie Smith is the best iteration of Zial.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But Garrick works his magic with her and convinces her, you know what? He's going to be safe.
Truly
you go to
paternally.
Bajor.
Very paternally.
Oh yeah, very paternally. But shockingly enough, as they depart, he kisses her on the mouth in not at all a fatherly and daughterly way. There might have been some tongue there.
Which is why it was super creepy.
That's right. So, quickly after that, Cisco very informally officiates the Rom and Lita wedding. No dresses, just the absolute basics with Quark, Nog,
Quark.
and a Dabo girl whose one of her butt cheeks hanging out of her dress are the only witnesses.
I just love Quark. I give it 2 weeks.
Oh yeah,
Yeah. But don't we all do that at weddings? Yeah. Well, how long do you give it? They'll never make it.
Man, call me an
Oh, it's
optimist.
so sad. Yeah.
oh, there's some you know.
There's some that will last, but there are certain friends
Yes.
are certain friends that get married and it's just like, well, place your bets.
Yes.
Is it going to last a year? Is this going to be under a year?
Absolutely. Yeah, I don't want to sound like a pessimist, but there are some weddings that hey, you know what, they're great, they're meant for each other, but other ones you're just waiting for the train wreck to begin.
You're just a realist.
Yeah, true.
So right after the I do's are said, Rom tries to send away Lita, but she initially refuses. But then Rom delivers an absolute killer speech, and she is taken away. That's goodbye number 2 for you.
Yeah, he has his smart moments. That was a good, heartfelt speech.
Oh, I thought so too.
That was great. That's great. And Matt, just to backtrack for a second, because it's something that I thought of as you were talking about it. Zial and Garrick might be a little creepy, but nothing tops the creepiness of Neelix and Cass. So, it's better than that.
Yeah, because that's like, well, what was she, 6 or something at
1.
the time?
Yeah, but
Oh
they're
my
older. They mature faster. They're on a much shorter schedule.
And they love to be controlled by creepy little trollish aliens.
I was gonna say if we got down on Worf for his little control freak show with Jadzia, Neelix takes the cake for sure.
Hey, who are we to judge? Every culture is beautiful, right?
Every culture is beautiful. Speaking of creepy cultures, though, the way that Nog looks at his new move is also a little creepy. Like, just taking a little bit of creepiness all through the goodbyes.
You secretly wonder if Lita's last name is Robinson.
I'm gonna just mute on that one.
Oh, well, yeah. And we also didn't see him break in to steal the teddy bear and then just leave. We stepped into him already in that room for some time. I'm just gonna say that in the cards.
Was he rubbing his ears?
Oh my God!
And Moogie does mean mama, right?
Yes.
Where am I in these notes? We must move on. As Cisco does his final preps for the battle, Nog informs him that Martok is calling from the border. It started. Martok informs him that the invasion force is coming. And his call is overpowered by Dukat, who is suddenly on the line. Dukat offers Cisco one last chance to surrender. And Cisco says no. The call is hung up, and the order to battle stations is given. Commercial break. Ooh, boy, the commercial breaks on this episode, very good little mini cliffhangers.
They are. This episode is excellently paced.
It is. They cram a hell of a lot. I kept checking the playtime on the Netflix of the episode. I'm like, this isn't a 2-hour episode. They have a lot to do. And then they managed to pull it off. Really well paced, and just things move along. It somehow doesn't feel all that rushed.
It's because they're tugging on threads that they've already established.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. Here's something I wanted to bring up at some point. Can we all just take a moment and really appreciate that this is the culmination of 5 seasons worth of stories of a million different characters now, and they all have just perfectly built up to this point.
That's why this episode works. Because it can be a 43-minute climax to all those stories.
Perfectly might be an overstatement if we're talking about everything that came before it building up to this. But yes, I think that this is a great culmination of the things that the core group of writers wanted to do in all of their episodes. We won't speak for all the episodes that weren't theirs.
Yeah, but they didn't. It didn't feel forced though either.
Right.
That they were jamming these, like tying these loose ends, but jamming it down our throats.
No, as a matter
You
of
can
fact,
tell they've sown the seeds all throughout. Definitely.
Yeah.
No, it's not too late it's not too early that they're doing this. In fact, that there were a couple of times where we were like, we should get to this sooner. So it was time for this to happen.
Yeah.
And credit where credit's due. This is the first time in all of Star Trek, and the only time still to date, that anybody has attempted this and have it like paid off as well. Even Enterprise had tried to do this, still hit that reset button between the Time Wars and all that kind of stuff, and then just the fourth season. They couldn't even pull this off, and that was the most mature up till, Discovery now, and nobody has come anywhere close to what this show pulled off.
No, it was pretty cool. And I mean, we're going to be talking about some of the awesome things that they're going to pull off. Like, I mean, the whole 6-episode opening of next season is going to be pretty cool to watch. The, 10-episode finale, as I like to call it, just starting at like the end of season 6, or season 7, where 10 episodes before the end, they start closing things down, which I think is brilliant. But that's still to come.
Act 4. The Dominion fleet is now only 20 minutes away from the station, but the Defiant needs about another hour to finish the minefield. But don't worry, we have Starfleet engineers here. They always inflate that time. Jake is now down in the infirmary, helping prepare for casualties, taking his familiar place next to Bashir in a battlefield. At this point now, armed Starfleet troops are everywhere on the station, preparing for another invasion, like with the Klingons.
We're about to get one of my favorite little character moments where they call back to Way of the Warrior between Odo and Garrick.
Garrick and Odo are up on the upper level of the promenade, where they speak about how they are both seemingly wildly out of place in this weird circumstance. And Garrick talks about having once the opportunity to kill Dukat, and now how he regrets it, and how by the end of the day, everyone is going to regret that.
And that was a good line. I like that. It wasn't Garrick was going to regret it. Everyone was. I thought that was fantastic.
I just love to, you'd shoot a man in the back. Well, it's the safest way, isn't it?
Yeah. I love that.
But this is like, I'm pretty sure we talked about it in The Way of the Warrior, of just like the quiet before the storm part. And this is like the really interesting two characters to give you to look at it, because we've seen now everyone has a part to play in this battle. But these two guys are two extremely capable people, but both of them recognize, what are we doing here? There's this huge storm approaching, and I can't do anything about it. And I like how we have you need to have somebody there that can speak to you about like the hopelessness feeling that's coming. And it's these two very interesting guys that are the ones feeling that little bit of hopelessness.
Sometimes sometimes it's them, sometimes it's Quark, but same difference. Like,
and it's
like Quark last time in Way of the Warrior with the root beer conversation. It's the same thing.
Yeah, and like I said, it's just refreshing that it's these two guys that could kick all sorts of ass, but Odo has no staff anymore. All of his Bajoran people that he is presumably more in direct command of are gone.
Well, and technically his position is with the Bajoran militia, so he's supposed to be neutral.
Oh, even more on top of that, yeah. And we have, sneaky best scene of the episode, possibly, where Rom and Quark have a great little short scene where they talk to each other, kind of giving themselves some mental encouragement about the battle, where they remind themselves that they are brothers and they are here to look out for each other. Oh boy, did I love that little tiny throwaway scene.
Is this the one where Quark kisses him on the back of the head at the end of
Yes.
it? So beautiful, man. Oh God. It made me tear up a little bit.
See, I know what you're referring to, Matt, but I wouldn't necessarily classify it as throwaway. It's an important character scene.
No, but man, I'm telling you, listen, when it's all these other things about like Martok, here's the invasion coming, we get the biggest action scene of the series practically to this point coming up.
It has to be.
Yeah.
And all the other Starfleet personnel running around on a station with phasers, and then you get two brothers just kind of quietly talking.
This is a scene
Well,
that
no,
could
but
have been cut. It absolutely could have been
Well, sure,
cut.
it could have been
It's
cut. But,
really good.
but what I like about this is that this show always acknowledges whenever it does something big like this that this is much bigger than just Starfleet or Bajor. This is about like everybody who lives on this station.
Absolutely. And I think that we all agree that this is a great scene. I think Matt's point is that this is one of those scenes where they've kind of already established this with these two characters. They could absolutely move on.
Oh yeah, you
They
could
don't
have
need
moved
this
on.
scene.
You could have moved on, but you would have lost something.
We're all glad they didn't.
To the show.
But
Yeah. But I'm telling you, like, if you, any listener who's listening to this review, having not watched the episode, do you even remember this was in here? But I'm telling you, now go back and watch this with, like, be tuned into the episodes like we try to when we're reviewing them. I'm telling you, this episode, this scene sticks out of like, oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, no, it's
Great, yeah.
The battles are awesome. The action is great. The pacing is intense, but it's these little character moments that really make the episode.
Absolutely.
Just like the next one where like Kira resigns, quote unquote, from the militia and just joins as a civilian protecting.
Yeah,
them.
but that's like the badass moment. That's what I'm
I
telling
love
you.
it. It's great.
Everybody gets their moment to shine moment. This isn't necessarily a moment to shine moment. This is just like great, like, you know, pluck the heartstrings kind of a moment. Kira gets the badass moment though. And that's the thing. I bet people are going to remember her a million times more. They're going to remember this scene of just, you know, we're here to look out for each other kind of a thing.
Right.
And not like we're going to pick up phasers. Well, they do eventually, but this is them just being brotherly. Hey, I got your back kind of stuff. It's not picking up phasers and, you know, screaming, hell yeah, let's go fight them.
Right.
It's something much more subtle than that.
No, yeah, you're right.
Yeah. So that's the last bit before all hell breaks loose, because here we go. The station activates their weapons array because the Dominion fleet is now there. Martok has joined the station's defenses. And this is where Matt said, Kira now arrives in ops, where she takes her rightful spot next to Sisko. And we get a little peek into the Dominion fleet, where we see that the Cardassians, led by Dukat, definitely want to go on to Bajor after this battle. So, Chris, this is where I will freely admit I didn't remember this, and I was absolutely wrong last week when I wondered if the Dominion going after and pursuing this non-aggression pact with Bajor is Dukat's strings being pulled.
Oh, no.
Where I thought like maybe he wants to step in as like, here I am once again, the savior of the Bajorans. No, that's not what. That's not.
He
what
wants
it was.
it. He wants his old job back.
Yeah, as it turns out, it's a bit more like that. Yeah.
And I like how this establishes too, because we haven't seen it too much. We've seen bits and pieces, but this is pretty much establishes the Dominion Cardassian relationship, where they're allies, but the Dominion is in charge.
Yeah, but the Cardassians don't think that.
No, the Cardassians don't think that. And they hate that whenever they're reminded of that. But like, it's Wayun has them on a leash.
So
in his way.
Yeah. The one other thing was, okay, that was certainly badass of Dukat pushing into Martok's signal and giving the ultra short, hey, you're going to give up. Right. But I kind of was silent, like a little bit hopeful that Dukat would give his one last, like, gloating, here I am with all my friends now, call to Sisko before the battle. Instead, he just kind of badasses it and goes straight into the fight.
We see him do that later between each other when they set foot back on the station.
Yeah, but you know, he wants to rub it in Sisko's face a little bit.
Well, he kind of does, but he certainly rubs it in Kira, Noto, and Quark's faces later. He's such an asshole in that scene.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So here we go. Dukat orders the fleet separated. Some of the ships go after Defiant, but the rest go after the station. The order is given, and the war has begun. And as the massive battle erupts, the Dominion is very surprised that suddenly the Federation's shields are holding up. They never did against Dominion weapons before. Starfleet was doing a little behind-the-scenes R&D, I see.
Yeah, before you go on, this is something else that I like about this episode is that this continues the narrative of upgrading the station. So we saw in the pilot, the station had nothing. We saw when they first met the Dominion, they needed to beef up the defenses. Then we saw the beefed up station go against the Klingons. And now we get to see the beefed up station do what it was designed for.
Yeah, the only issue, and I thought it was a great battle scene, and at the time it was probably a battle scene we'd never really seen before, and some of the shots were fantastic.
It's still
over and
good.
above, but a little like all those ships, and it couldn't take down a stationary thing. It's just they could have just sat back and just fired from, I don't know, but still it was pretty cool. Like seeing the ship, the one Cardassian ship, I guess, lose power and crash into the shields and explode. I thought that was fantastic, but
Right.
I just a little far fetched that it could withstand not even just little Dominion ships, but we're talking huge Cardassian ships, huge Dominion battle cruisers, and it was standing up for that long. But interesting.
And a mobile place can have just massive dedicated power supplies to it. All right. Well,
They've
half
they've been upgrading for 3 years at this point.
yeah, you just take away all the ore processing parts and just pack in power generators for shields and a bit of hand waving. I'll accept it. And let's be clear, the good guys don't win this.
No.
The station.
No,
Well,
true.
no. Let's get to it. So Martok and the station continue to hold off the Dominion and manage to protect the Defiant. Here, Dukat, frankly, should have sent the entire fleet after the Defiant and left the station. But yeah,
He sends quite a bit after the Defiant, though. It's like, holy crap, that's a lot of ships.
Still, let's be clear here, Blair. The station is, in fact, taking an absolute beating. And just in time, right after word is sent that the minefield is done, the Defiant is coming back. The field is activated and the mines all cloak. And Dukat and Weyoun are pissed at this. And Dukat orders everything thrown at the station. And Cisco receives the info that a reserve Dominion fleet is now incoming. Worf demands orders, and Cisco gives them, to the shock of everyone. All Starfleet personnel are to abandon the station. Guys, we have, in fact, here, if you all observe, a Babylon 5 ending to the episode. That could easily be the cliffhanger of a season, abandoned ship. It isn't. So we get this great, rush of this final act of all, the great character stuff. The battle was not the end of the episode, which was great.
No, the coda to this episode is really good. I'm glad we have it.
Definitely a Babylon 5 ending, though, and I appreciated every minute of it. We needed it for this particular one. And it's best of both worlds levels of, if I had to wait on this in real time, I would have been real upset.
I know. People.
Yeah, me
People
too.
don't think. I was gonna say, people don't think about this the way that they think about the best of both worlds cliffhanger, but I'm gonna say this is way better.
Really? I don't know. I still think the best of both worlds, any Star Trek fan will never forget that cliffhanger. I just think DS9 does the cliffhangers differently, I guess. You in
Well, and that's what I like about
best
DS9.
of both worlds, you're returning back moments after,
Right.
after the summer. These are, as we know, and I know we've talked about in other cliffhangers, we return months later after. I guess you could call this a cliffhanger, which I think is different. I like it, but I still think the best of both worlds was definitely probably the most ultimate cliffhanger, and probably because I lived through it. So maybe
I don't
that's
disagree
why.
with that statement.
But you're right. The thing that we've mentioned before on these, the season finales for DS9, they wrap up whatever was going on in the season prior to it, and they pretty much just set the stage for the story for next season. It's not going to continue moments after we left, but it's just this is what you got to prepare for next year.
Man, back to the best of both. The Borg episode you were just saying, that episode ends with kind of a moment of dread cliffhanger, though. This one ends with a little bit more of I'm going to go punch a wall kind of an end.
Yeah,
so they're both really good, but they're just totally different. So it's hard
True.
to kind of directly.
I don't know that they're totally different though, because you're still you're left at that point of desperation, everything is different now, and that's kind of what I mean. Is that when this ended, this time and the first time I watched it, I was like, everything's different. Like nothing's going to be the same when they come back. How are they going to flip this? How are they going to change this? And so when I say that it's the best of both worlds ending, or it's the best one besides the best of both worlds, that's what I mean. It leaves you with that sense of, I really need to know. I need to know right now what's going to happen next. I need to know how they're going to get the station back. There are so many questions and so many little things from this episode that I want to know. Where does this person go? Where does that person end up? How does Kira work on the station with Dukat? Yeah, that's what I mean when I say
this is kind of at the level of the Battlestar Galactica kind of cliffhangers of like New Caprica falling and stuff, where it's like, holy crap, this is a complete reset of the show kind of a cliffhanger. And we ultimately find out it's not quite as shocking, as we maybe thought it could be, but still, it's huge.
I think too, just sorry to interrupt, Hanson, the difference between this and the best of both worlds, and I definitely agree they both have merit. Best of both worlds, essentially you have two questions going into that. What's going to happen to Picard, and how are they going to beat the Borg? And as Chris just said, you come out of this episode thinking, well, what's going to happen with, the station? What's going to happen with Starfleet? What's going to happen with this person and that person? And there's just so many more
so does that make it better, Blair?
I don't want to say it makes it better. I still think Best of Both Worlds had a bigger shock value than this, for sure.
Fair.
Not to say it's better, but it was different, and it was a bigger shock value.
Well, let's get to that cliffhanger in this one, because in Act 5, things are a bit chaotic as the evacuation takes place. Again, another little bit of a World War II type of Dunkirk kind of a thing here. The enemy's right at the gates, and we got to get the hell out of here. And we have goodbye number 3. Dax and Worf say goodbye. He was going to be assigned to the Klingon ship Rotaran, and Dax is going on a Defiant. But they agree to marry when this is all over, marking the biggest tragedy of this episode.
Do we really? Does Worf really need to be? Why is he being assigned to Martok's ship?
He shouldn't be.
He shouldn't be. No, you stay on your ship. You go back, because right now they're in a war, and Worf is a senior officer that's probably should be given his own ship at this point. Because they're usually probably short captains and things like that. But yeah. I don't know. That was just kind of silly. I know it separates all the characters, and in some ways it does give Worf a different storyline moving forward, but totally unnecessary.
I like them being split up. That makes all the sense in the world. And it would be great if there was a second ship, Federation ship there, and he just gets numbered drawn out of the lotto, and he has to go to the, whatever ship. The Klingon thing doesn't make sense, but emotionally, other than all the bad negativity I have with these two characters, I like the emotional intent behind this scene.
I think they start getting more of the emotional intent right with them, once we get past the Ryza episode.
I'm with Hanson on this one. It's rare, but I'm with Hanson on this one.
Especially I'm really looking forward to that episode the change of heart episode next season. I think they actually do their relationship really well in that one.
I want to be corrected back, but like I said, there's just so much damage done that it's hard to come back.
Wait for that episode. I'm curious to see what you're going to think, because I really do think that they hit it on the head in that one.
I'm always willing to change my opinion on things. So we now have our 4th goodbye, where Sisko addresses a crowd on the promenade, which is also being addressed to everyone else. This is his Douglas MacArthur moment. In our final clip.
When I first took command of this post, all I wanted was to be somewhere else. Anywhere but here. But now, 5 years later, this has become my home, and you have become my family. And leaving the station, leaving you, is one of the hardest things I've ever had to do. But this war isn't over yet. I want you to know that while we were keeping the Dominion occupied, a Starfleet Klingon task force crossed the border into Cardassia and destroyed the Dominion shipyards on Taurus 3. Your sacrifices, our sacrifices, made that victory possible. But no victory can make this moment any easier for me. And I promise I will not rest until I stand with you again. Here. In this place where I belong. Cisco to Defiant.
Standing by, sir.
1 to beam aboard.
Aye, Captain.
Hey, I get it. With that solemn kind of a speech, with that music, it would be inappropriate for it to happen. But when they cut to the Defiant, when he is talking, and you see them when he is saying that we've already struck them and hit them a pretty good punch, I wouldn't have minded seeing our Federation crew give out a little bit of a cheer that this isn't just a massive failure, that they are already taking it to the bad guys. Seems like they would have.
They kind of do more of that next season, though, because I remember them in somewhere in those first 6 episodes, they have this tradition where when they drain one of the phaser cells, they line it up and they have everyone cheer and someone gives some sort of inspirational speech. So that's coming. But yeah, you're right.
It is. Yeah, but it just totally shouldn't have been in here because of that speech. It needed to be like a very quiet moment. Yeah. So, So on the Defiant, Cisco is surprised to find Garrick there, who is the true survivor, and he asks to join them. Permission granted. The Defiant and a Rotaran flee, having to fight their way free from the station. Kira and Odo now go to Ops and contact the Dominion, welcoming them to DS9. And then they sabotage the station, shutting it down. She wrecks up the place. Quark works. Go ahead.
It's nice poetic justice because that's how the Cardassians left them the station.
Absolutely. And I just like so many of these characters, like it doesn't all get captured in the notes because there's so many of them. Like Nog has it later on, but I like her just that's the last message that's the last signal this station's sending in a while, and then she blows everything up. Just these cool little, a little bit of fist pump kind of.
Plus, I kind of like it. I kind of like that one shot of Kira and Odo shot from underneath them walking up because it makes them look more badass as they're blowing up the station.
Absolutely. Now, Quark works to welcome the enemy to his bar, and he is joined by Rom, who is now back in civilian clothes, and he claims to be a spy working for the Federation. Does anybody actually believe that? Or is that him just saying that?
I love Quark. The Federation must be getting desperate.
Yeah, that was hilarious. Hey, but you got to remember later on who actually does become a spy or a courier for the Federation. One of our favorite, most unlikely characters in Morn, right? So that. Yeah.
But
so
it's
if he
just
can do
like,
it.
But it's totally in his character to just go, hey, you know what? I'm gonna puff out my chest here a little bit, kind of a thing, I think.
Well, I mean, he does become instrumental in saving the station when they come back.
He does. It's plausible. I mean, his last order could be just like, be smart, do something to help us, kind of a thing. And he might kind of blow that up a little bit. So as he walks to start doing his job in the bar, he notices that Jake Cisco is still there on the station. Jake has chosen to stay behind to act as a reporter behind enemy lines. And Jake's questionable logic is that he is going to be safe as the son of the emissary.
That's the only one that really doesn't make sense of where they end up, because Rom makes sense. Garrick makes sense because if Garrick doesn't go with them, he's going to get killed because, the Dominion don't care about him, and Ducat definitely wants him dead. But Jake Cisco, I mean, yeah, he's the son of the emissary, but he's also a Federation citizen, and so technically, doesn't that make him a POW? I don't know.
Yeah, but I was thinking of that too, because I know you mentioned it at the beginning. But as the son of the emissary, he is now a religious. He's protected by their religious leader's family, and therefore, with the Bajoran people, religion, whether it's the Kai or whoever, trump everything. So I can kind of see how he thought he was going to get protected, and obviously he does.
Still, that's a big assumption to make.
Yeah,
Well,
that's
maybe on his end, but you
That's
know,
what I mean.
and the Dominion, they want to make sure everyone believes that they are honorable to their word, that they signed a non-aggression pact. We will treat them with respect, and we won't have an issue with them. And that extension would probably reach out to Jake.
Also, Jake is what, 19, 20, 21? So every writer could write that off as, hey, even if it wasn't the most sound logic,
he thinks it's sound logic.
He's
Yeah,
20
because
years
he's
old.
20.
I'm not saying it doesn't make sense for the character. I'm saying that's a big gamble to put on that the Dominion's going to leave you alone just because you're some famous figure's son.
But I like it, though.
I believe that he would believe that, though.
Yeah, he
Would
could
you
easily
rather
believe it.
I just like it. It's different. It's not your Jake is just I'm going to take up the cause and go join Starfleet. I'm going to do something different.
And I'll put it this way: he wouldn't make sense anywhere else but staying behind, because I don't know what they would. I don't know what they would do with him on the Defiant or on the starbase that they end up at. I don't know what he definitely would be on the Klingon ship. So yeah, it makes the most sense for him to stay.
Absolutely.
And I like to point out again, a theme of this episode is the goodbyes, and we are robbed of what would be the most important goodbye is between Jake and his dad. I like that we see all these characters say goodbye, and the two that we probably, I'll say I care the most about, which two, we don't get to see that goodbye. And I like that that's a little bit of the, the twist at the end, so to speak.
Cassidy Yates and I can't think of the second one. Who's the second one?
Chris. So
I was gonna say, after all these goodbyes, Matt, let's get to Sisko's little "until we meet again" message.
Yeah. So now after, Jake is left on the station, we cut to Defiant. Ben Sisko is super pissed, but knows they can't go back for him. Now on the station again, the Dominion forces freely walk on board, where they are met by Kira, Odo, and Quark, who stand defiantly in front of them, but welcome them on the station. Dukat goes to his office, where he finds Sisko's baseball is still there, a promise that Sisko will be back.
Such a cool moment.
It's a good one.
Yeah, that's a cool moment, but I'll argue the final moment is even better, because finally we get an absolutely epic shot of the Dominion, or of the Defiant, I'm sorry, and the Rotaran joining a massive armada of a joint Federation and Klingon fleet of warships heading off to fight in a quadrant-spanning war as we go to summer hiatus.
Right, and what I like, it affects more the next episode than this one, but what I like is we end with that shot, and then when we come back, the first shot of the new season is that fleet pretty much in ruins, except for a few ships. And
the writers, the main producers, they send these shots off to, special effects people, and it came back. They hated this shot because I think they had in their mind of the two ships just joining a fleet and just going off. What we see it as is they join it and then they come at us, which is a big, aggressive stance. And I don't think they wanted to have it as aggressive like that. They wanted a little bit more freedom to decide however the next season jumps off, because they didn't really know how it would.
But that doesn't.
But this dictated that, we're ending on a big aggressive moment. So then they had to kind of change it to make it beat up at the beginning of next season. But it's kind of interesting.
I don't know why that you would hate that, though, because this is war. We're going to war, so of course we end on aggression.
They wanted it as a little bit more of an open end to allow them to start the next season any way they wanted. Why it wouldn't be something aggressive, I don't know, but I think they wanted to not have their hands, dealt to them by the special effects guys.
If it was such a concern, though, they found their way out of it real quick.
It's fine.
The thing I like about this shot was I don't think we ever saw something this epic before with this many ships. And the thing there's multiple things I liked about it. It wasn't just all the big ships. They had the little ships in there. And I'm not a, Smonsky like you, but I'm sure you could look at that shot there and see all the different classes of ships in that, which I think is fascinating.
Well, except for like a Sovereign and an Intrepid, because we can't confuse the poor TV audience.
Yeah, that said, every Galaxy class ship in there was the Enterprise. They screwed up on that. They all had the Enterprise registration number. And there was no, I think, Stream Runner class, because the 3D model was lost when it was sent between First Contacts, ILM, and whoever did
I'm pretty sure we get Steam Runners later.
It's one of those Norway class. One of those is just not in Deep Space Nine because they never rebuilt the model.
I know we definitely get Akira class ships later in DS9.
The thing I also like too, and granted, you're right, they didn't show a Sovereign class ship, but in the back of your mind, you're thinking, wow, Picard and his ship are going to be in this war somewhere. We may never see them, but they will be fighting this war too. And wouldn't it be neat to get a little bit of background on what they battled through?
Well, we will never
read about it.
Yeah, that's the only way you're going to get it, is we have to read about it, which,
No, but at the time, that's what was going through my mind.
I know, but like, it just makes me frustrated that something like Insurrection, because that was happening during the time that this Dominion War series was happening. So it's like, oh, we can have this really cool like perspective shift, but no, we got to go dick around with the Space Amish.
Missed opportunity.
I love the Space Amish.
It was during the the brief ceasefire that we all remember from Deep Space Nine, right?
Right.
No. They say that in the movie.
It was definitely during the ceasefire. Certainly. Great movie. Love it.
The Dominion, who are just ruthlessly aggressive, just decided to take a break.
They're in negotiations. They're in Dominion negotiations. And I'm like, because the Dominion negotiate.
Yeah.
God, Insurrection is such a wasted opportunity.
But that baseball, that's some good stuff. And we get to see that kind of same thing
next season, but different.
Yeah. Which is great when they figure out how to have a little bit of season spanning structure like that.
Yeah, speaking of the baseball, and again, I know it's very defining of this scene, but the Ben Sisko Christmas ornament of him, he actually has the baseball in his hand, which is kind of cool. That's it is still that important and defining of a character, of an object of him, that they put it in the Christmas ornament. I thought it was fantastic.
I mean, that's one choice, but I would have gone with him tinkering with that stupid clock.
Oh,
such a cool clock.
You know what? It's still there though. Like it's there for the rest of the series.
What about that ship, that sailing ship he got into real hard for one episode? Anyway, where were we?
The end of season 5.
Woo!
Unbelievable. 2 more to go.
So should we go into final thoughts and ratings then?
Absolutely.
All right.
Is there any need? Really?
Formality. Blair, you start us off.
Well, I think, for those listeners that have been listening for quite some time, I'm a big fan of episodes where it's a joint cast, where everyone is a prominent figure, and it's just not focused on one figure. And we had this, and not only did we have this with our main characters, even though some had smaller parts, we also had it for our new secondary / primary characters that we are basically our part of the main cast moving forward for the rest of the 2 seasons. It's great. This episode was fantastic. It brought back a lot of, I guess it built things over the last season, and they brought them in and didn't ham fist it. It was done nicely. The writing was done really, really well. A lot of good moments, whether it was between Quark and Rom, a couple little funny moments with, Rom and Lita, some great moments between Weyoun and Sisko. I just think overall it was a fantastic episode, and it really, really sets up, the rest of this series. And we always talk about how DS9 was the series where we really fought the war. Well, this is it. We finally reached it. We are finally at war. This is for all those fans out there that love phaser battles and space battles. This is your right up your alley at this point. And I know watching this when it first came out, I thought, holy cow, where are we going to go next season? And boy, that summer was long. Not as long as the summer between Best of Both Worlds, but it was still something that I really, really look forward to. And you know what? I still look forward to it now, getting to watch season 6 and the great, fantastic episodes. As you said, Hanson, what we're going to start off with is just fantastic. So I know I've babbled on, but I'm going to give this 5.0 Ben Cisco baseballs.
Chris?
I mean, I don't know what you say about an episode like this. It has everything that we love about Deep Space Nine. It's got really cool character stuff. It's got really cool story stuff. It's got awesome battles there in the 3rd act, 4th act, whenever that happens. It's got intrigue, mystery, and wonder. This is a fantastic episode. I've given some really crappy episodes 3 and 4 stars, but I love them. This is one that everybody can love, and it's definitely a 5 out of 5 journalistic journeys of jousting and jostling.
Yeah, Matt, I'll let you have the eloquent last word, as I'm sure you will. But I'm going to echo a lot with what Blair and Chris said and say, yeah, this is an amazing episode. I remember having this one back when they sold single episodes on VHS, and I just wore this tape out. It was so much fun. It really is like a 43-minute roller coaster climax, and it sets up the next season so well. It ties up everything from this season. I don't know what else to say about it, so I'm just going to give it the 5 stars and throw it on over to Matt, who I'm sure has a much more elegant way of saying what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I don't know, but what more can you say? Like it or not, Deep Space Nine is identified by the Dominion War. It brings us everything that we really like about the show, and then, Vic Fontaine. So you can't get everything, but it gives you everything that you really love about Deep Space Nine. And this is the start of the things that we love about Deep Space Nine. This is a quintessential episode. I wouldn't be surprised if we have a bunch of listeners that kind of maybe listen to a handful of episodes here or there, but they're like, you know what? I'll wait until they get to the war. Well, this is it. And this is how important this episode is. It defines all of Deep Space Nine. It probably defines a lot of UP2. It's that important. It's that good. Of course, it's 5 stars. It's 5 stars across the board. It is what? Top 5 must-have episodes of the series?
I mean, you can't watch this series without this episode. This episode kicks off the last 2 seasons.
It's series defining. And it's the last episode of season 5. It's that important. So yeah, 5 across the board. Perfect episode.
The perfect episode. That's how we all rate it.
I mean, it's not as perfect as The Visitor. But,
well,
Yeah,
okay, so you have to have gradations of perfect at that point then. So this is a
right.
4.99, and that's a 5.0.
But sorry, Chris, for stepping all over your smooth as hell transition. You were working there.
I was trying.
You blew it.
We're past that now, so let's keep going with this. So would that be a 4.99, and this would be a 5, or this would be a 4.99?
The Visitor is a perfect 5 if it was in any other universe except for a podcast where we have Blair on the show.
Oh man, but Blair has an opinion, as all of our wonderful fans out there do, and we love to hear those opinions. So we're going to throw to our roving reporter now to tell us what you guys thought about whatever the last episode we did on here was.
And again, watch. I'll be slightly more drunk in this one than the last feedback.
All right, man. And if you were wondering how you can possibly get Matt to drunkenly read your thoughts, these are the ways. Many are the ways, and these are the ways. You could email us at up2podcast@gmail.com. You could go to the Trekmate forum and drop a nice forum feedback for us at forum.trekmatefamily.com. Or if you're into brevity, you could hit up Twitter We're there at UP2 Podcast. If you dare interact with us on Twitter. We also have individual Twitter handles, and I'll let the guys share theirs before I go into mine.
So if you want to talk about anything nerdy, whether that be Star Trek or especially Star Trek Discovery, we got Star Wars coming up next month. We had Thor Ragnarok come out this last week, and it was awesome. So all that geeky stuff and more, come find me at mhansen0207 HANSEN.
Just don't troll him or you'll feel the wrath.
Truer words have never been spoken. But I can be found at ProSub0, where I just had the revelation that the John Dies at the End book series has the best literary universe in any book. Screw Foundation, screw the Dune series. This series is where it's
Big
at.
words, heavy words right there.
Yeah, and I'll be raving about it on Twitter.
Oh, nice. At ProSub0.
ProSub0, I believe I said that.
Okay. Blair?
I can be found at...
Hold on. Have you yet changed?
No.
All right, so you don't get to talk. Blair doesn't have a Twitter anymore. We've revoked it because he refuses to change his name to the appropriate name.
Maybe I'll change it for the UPs. It could be ready for the UPs as best new Twitter handle. So Smonsky, make sure you please put that in one of the categories, best Twitter handle out of the four of us. But for now, I can be reached at Medic1849, where I'm tweeting about or retweeting about hockey, soccer, and Star Trek.
And if you were interested in retweets of random crap, you can follow me at Carnivore J. Moving on. We are also available on Facebook. You can find us there at Upper Pylon 2, a Star Trek Deep Space Nine review podcast. We're also on iTunes, where you can drop us those dangly and beautiful 5-star reviews. So, fellas, I think this ends yet another podcast. And you can catch us next time with the UPs.
For season 5, and then shortly thereafter diving into the war with A Time to Stand.
Docking clamps are open, guys.
This is Blair from Ontario, Canada. Until next time.
I'm so terrible at that last little bit. This is Chris in South Carolina.
This is Matt from Arizona, closing hailing frequencies.
I'm Matt in Buffalo, and I shall return. You are clear for departure?
Yeah,
Chris, come on. This shit's getting awfully loose. Let's tighten this up. There you go. End it.